If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and yes, my voice is finally back to 100%! Ah, it feels so good to be able to go over the top and not have to sound like a damn chain smoker with laryngitis. I am finally back to my old self, and I am happy to kick this off with an album review. So, yeah, this weekend there's only 2 albums that caught my eye, so there won't be an Under the Radar episode for the weekend of April 7th, so you're going to get 2 full reviews. And the first review I'm talking about here on Saturday is the 4th studio offering from French progressive death metal band Stormhaven with Blindsight. So yeah, I got interested in checking this one out by going through Metal Archives, looking to see what all was coming up, and this one caught my eye because I feel like I need to talk more prog metal. Since I am a big fan of prog metal, I figured how about I add this to my list. And when I was looking at the band, there was one band I saw they were compared to a lot, and that was Opeth. And that immediately got my gears rolling, so let's get into it. So we kick things off with Fracture. Now, this starts off unlike most songs on this album. It begins with no build-up, no intro, interlude, whatever. It just goes straight into blast beats and riffs that feel like Morbid Angel. And that's really the only time where it gets, like, downright brutal. And then after that, you basically get what you're going to get on the rest of the album, and that's some great riffs with some cool melody and groove that remind me of Opeth. If I say Opeth a lot in this review, trust me, it's for good reason, because these guys touch on so much old school Opeth. Like, there are moments on here, like in the song Hellion, which comes in about the halfway point, made me think of Blackwater Park era Opeth a little bit. And then there are times where this will feel like Deliverance, maybe even My Arms Your Hearse, or Ghost Reveries even, like, and even Watershed. Like, it just goes all over the map in terms of the Opeth influence, which I'm sure the band would probably take that as a compliment, considering I'm sure Opeth is one of the big influences on Stormhaven. And it's not a bad thing to say that they're like Opeth, because Opeth's one of my all-time favorite bands, and Stormhaven does a great job at paying homage to Opeth without sounding like a clone or a copycat. But yeah, with Fracture, yeah, it's like after that brutal intro, it goes into those Opeth moments. Vision is another one that has a bit of a strange opening. This one starts off similar to Tool, where you get a notable bass line and like a tribal drum building block, kind of like you would hear on a Tool song, and I thought that was actually pretty cool. But this track kind of introduces more dissonant melodies with the guitars, but then you get some cool riffage and keyboards that made me think of Dream Theater, and Dream Theater, I would say, is another big influence on this album, especially whenever it gets into the more uplifting moments. Like, for the most part, this album has a lot of uplifting qualities to it. It's not so much dark and somber sounding, it's more uplifting, but with some overtones that do get a little more dramatic or suspenseful. But yeah, Vision kind of brings in that Dream Theater vibe. But all throughout the album, you do get some really cool chugging riffs that make you think death metal. Shadow Walker, again with a cool intro that starts off kind of similar to Gatecreeper, or maybe even as far back as Bolt Thrower even. Like, it's a more groovy, foot-stomping riff that just scream groovy death metal. And I like how the first part of the song kind of combines that with some suspenseful, dramatic progressions in the background. And then it even gets a little haunting with the atmosphere at times. And even a breakdown that made me think of Gojira a little bit. Fellow French band right there, but with an organ on top. And then back to Hellion, like I said, that song has some like Blackwater Park era Opeth moments. Keeps the Dream Theater vibes, but even brings in a little bit of Rush. Like the way it starts with the keyboards and the guitar progressions kind of made me think of like something like, I don't want to say Spirit of the Radio, but it's kind of in that vein, kind of like the Permanent Waves, Moving Pictures, era Rush with how the keyboards are on top of a guitar progression. But back to the Opeth vibes we go, and even some beautiful acoustic licks. Like all throughout the album, you get occasional acoustic licks that kind of either enhance the heaviness or bring things down to a calmer place to build a giant dynamic shift. Salvation, the following track, very much feels like Opeth and Dream Theater mashed up and created this track. But it even gets a little thrashy at the end. Like, you get like this thrashy riff and beat at the end, which was really cool. It was like, dude, we're getting more energy around here. But the keyboards on this track in particular kind of give off a more epic vibe, which again kind of ties into the more uplifting quality of this album. Now, most of these songs, the first 5 tracks, kind of range between like a little over 7 minutes to about 8.5 minutes. But now we get to the big closer, Dominion, which is 24.5 minutes. It's a long song, but it does not feel that long. It kind of goes by pretty quickly because they keep it interesting. Like, it starts off almost like Between the Buried and Me a little bit with the guitars and the way everything's going. Then you suddenly get a Middle Eastern acoustic lick, which it's like, since when did we go from BT Bam to Nile all of a sudden? Only not as brutal. But this song, you want to talk about guitar leads. Like, all throughout the album, these guitar leads are flying with taste, melody, and shred. And this song has at least 4 or 5 solos, and they're all different and unique. But back into the Opeth vibe we go. We get an awesome tapping lead coming in through as well. Beautiful. Like, there's more acoustic licks on this track than on any other track of the album, and they're so beautifully done, especially towards the middle when it helps really calm things down and makes it feel soothing, even with a mellotron on top with a bass line that kind of follows along. And that bass line made me think of Cynic a little bit, and that's before the big dynamic shift when the growls hit hard and the guitars get more chunkified and crazy. Although on this track, again, the Opeth vibes are there, but there's also a little bit of vibes of Dan Swano's Moon Tower album, especially with how the guitars and the keyboards complement each other, especially in the back half of the song. But and some of the Opeth vibes on here I get from like My Arms Your Hearse and Ghost Reveries in particular. Maybe even a touch of Watershed as well. But there was one particular clean vocal passage on this track, along with an acoustic section in the middle, that was beautifully done because, like I said, everything for the most part about this is great. The death growls, very Dan Swano-esque, like they're more like bark forth, like more bark growls rather than guttural growls. There's some black metal screams here and there. Now, the riff work, you get Opeth, Dream Theater, all over this album. The bass is audible and has its moments of shine. Drum work, lots of groove, clever fills and accents with the cymbals. Very much kind of reminded me of like a drummer like Martin Lopez or Martin Axelrod. The production has an old school vibe, but it's mixed in a modern way. After all, it was mixed and mastered by the legendary Fredrik Nordstrom, who is one of the kings of Swedish metal as a whole. Now, the one complaint I have about this album, like musically, this album is absolutely incredible. But the big complaint and what's going to knock the score down for me, the clean vocals are not great. They're serviceable and solid, but... And the reason I say they are not great is because there are times while I was listening to this album where the clean vocals kind of felt a little tad bit off-key on the guitars. There were moments where the clean vocals were actually fantastic, like in the middle of Dominion, for example, on top of an acoustic section. But for the most part, whenever the vocalist is trying to soar along, it almost sounds like he was trying too hard, and he sounded a tad bit off-key from the pitch of the guitars. So that's the one complaint I have about this album, is that the clean vocals were very much inconsistent. Like, sometimes they were really good, other times just a bit off-key. But overall, besides that, musically this album's brilliant, but because of the clean vocals being the way they were, it does knock the score down, not by much, just by a little bit. And for that reason, I give this album an 8.5 out of 10. I think musically this is some of the best stuff I've heard all year. If only those clean vocals would have been better performed, I think this could have been a contender for album of the year for me. Because musically, Stormhaven, you've got the music down pat perfectly. Maybe the clean vocals, I'm not saying the vocalist is bad at clean vocals. Like I said, there were plenty of moments where they were performed really well. It's just sometimes just felt a bit off-key to my ears. But of course, that's just my opinion. Who the hell am I to say? But regardless, 8.5 out of 10. And that does it for my review of Blindsight by Stormhaven. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of this album if you've checked it out. But until next time, you people out there, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.